What's up, y'all? I'm Will here with Schedulefly, and this is the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, one of the highest rated hospitality podcasts in the world, brought to you by us at Schedulefly. We provide a very simple web-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. If you're on pencil and paper or Excel, or you're on some software with tons of bells and whistles and features you don't need or use, Schedulefly is the perfect place for you. Easy to use, point, click, and go, and we'll take great care of you. Schedulefly.com, free trial, check it out. All right, y'all, check it out. Stick is our sponsor, connectwithstick.com. This is an incredible text and marketing tool. So check this out. Engage your customers, drive foot traffic, and increase sales at your bar, your restaurant, your store with Stick. Your targeted messages reach your audience instantly, promoting special offers and events. Look, 98% of texts are seen within 3 minutes. So this thing is simple and it's effective and it works. Elevate your marketing strategy and watch your customer base grow with the most direct way to connect with your customers through text. Start today and see results on the very first text. Stick is a better way to connect with your customers and the easiest way to increase your sales. www.connectwithstick.com. And again, that's www.connectwithstick.com. Folks, this is an awesome sponsor. It's an awesome business. We at Schedulefly know them well. We know that the results are there. This is a highly effective tool, and it's run by a business run by great people. Check them out, connectwithstick.com. What's up, y'all? Oh boy, are we lucky to have had Fred on this episode and on this podcast. He is, without question, the most knowledgeable, intelligent, connected, veteran hospitality people I've come across. He knows this industry so well and is able to articulate so concisely and so effectively his thoughts and his ideas and his opinions. And I could have talked to him all day. I really hope that this 1 hour episode turns into a series of episodes. I'd love to have him back on once or twice or 3 times a year. It would be worth it. I'm very lucky that Dave Query, our customer for a long time, met Fred earlier this year, connected Fred and I, and it turned out that Fred lives 5 minutes from my house. So we've hung out a couple times and had some conversations, and he was in the studio for this podcast. I happen to be traveling. It's the first time we've done it that way. But y'all, put down what you're doing. If you're listening to this, lock in, stay focused. This is a great episode. Thank you. Okay, well, this is a first. So today, we have my friend Fred LeFranc on the podcast, but he's in Charlotte at Everybody Studios where we were going to be together. I had something come up, a personal thing, so I'm up here in Raleigh, North Carolina, calling in on the Zoom while Fred is there. So Fred, thank you for being flexible and thank you for joining today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
All right, Fred, I always just ask everybody to start out, and you can flow with this however you want, but just introduce yourself.
My name is Fred LeFranc. I'm the founder and chaos strategist of Results Through Strategy. We're a consulting company for the hospitality space. We work with emerging brands that need a path for growth and legacy brands that may need revitalization, along with technology companies that service the restaurant industry.
Fred, you are you are the most connected dude I have come across. We've been doing this 17 years and you seem to know everybody, and you're a super sharp dude and know a lot about the business side of the hospitality business and the tech side as well. Now, I go into your LinkedIn profile and I look at your history and I look at all the cool things you've done, but the thing that stood out that I had to ask you about, actually, it's a bit of a curveball probably, but if I saw correctly, you went to Northwestern and you started out pre-med. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And I went to Davidson College and I started out pre-med. And here we are talking hospitality. So I don't know what happened, but I'm glad that things happened like they did, because I love this world that you and I serve, and I know you do too. So what was the genesis of your entry into the hospitality business?
Well, when I had my scholarship to go to Northwestern University to be a doctor in 6 years, one of the requirements was to work 15 hours a week. And so I went to work. Northwestern University is in Evanston. I went to work at a Hilton Hotel in Skokie, Illinois, 15 hours a week. And then after my first year, I worked there full time because I really enjoyed it. And it was fascinating because it was absolute chaos, and I loved it. At school, everyone that was in my class was very smart. 60 of us got in with 4,000 applicants. So clearly we had the creme de la creme, but they were weird dudes, and I realized that, they weren't friendly, they weren't nice. They're very smart, but they had this, social skills of a dirty ashtray. But in the hotel, it was just fantastic. We had, Puerto Rican busboys, Greek waiters, African American dishwashers, Mexican cooks, led by a gentleman from the Netherlands. And I just fell in love with the hospitality space. Ended up staying in it for several years in the hotel business. And then my first restaurant job was with a company called Let Us Entertain You Enterprises, Chicago. I worked in Rich Melman's fourth concept that he had created called the Pump Room. And so at the age of 20, I find myself wearing a tuxedo to work every single day, dealing with Chicago's elite. And we were the hottest restaurant at the time. And I just never looked back.
Never look back. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean um, boy, it sure is. You mentioned the diversity of the workplace, and it is the most naturally diverse industry I've ever come across, and truly meritocratic. Because I always say, like, this is an industry where nobody cares. Like, check your ego, check your degree. Nobody cares where you went to college. Nobody cares whether you did go to college. Nobody really cares what your background is. What they care about is, they don't care about your race. They don't care about your religion. They care about, are you going to show up and be a good teammate and support your team and take great care of our customers? Are you
Yep.
willing to do that? Let's go. And
Yep. You
if
got
you're
to
going to show
hustle.
up when you're, yeah,
You got
and
to
hustle.
hustle. Keep a smile on your face and hustle.
Yeah. It's funny because I always feel like I equate a restaurant or the hospitality business very much to, like, the only other thing I can think of where you have to really learn to keep your cool under massive amounts of pressure would be sort of in the medical space, like a ER in a hospital, right?
Yeah.
Because I've come, like, when I started doing this podcast, Fred, I thought, like, I'm going to learn a lot, and then one day I'm going to have my own restaurant. And it didn't take me long to realize that I don't think I have what it takes. But so I so greatly admire people that have that skill set of being able to be successful in this business, because whether you own one restaurant or 1,000, any day, any hour, something can and probably will go wrong. And if you don't have the ability to manage everything from a cook quitting mid shift to somebody, embezzling money, to you name it. I mean, some customer being irate. If you don't have the ability to calmly just go, okay, and be creative and find a way to resolve that situation and lead with cool and calm and work under massive amounts of stress and pressure, you can't do this, because that's what it takes. I think that, I don't, you've been in it,
Oh no, you're right.
you've
You
been
got
in
it.
it and
Yeah.
around it, but
Yeah.
it
You got to
just
stay
seems
cool.
like you got to stay cool. And there's so many skill sets that you have to learn, because, like, every aspect of the economy kind of flows through a restaurant, through the back door and in the front door, and just everything, every aspect comes through a restaurant. And so the skill set you have to learn to be really good at this, I think it's underappreciated by majority of people. I think people like you clearly get it. I get it. I couldn't do it, but I definitely get it. And I don't think the average consumer has any idea of what it takes and how challenging it is to be really good in this game and get it right over the long term, like through different economic cycles and through different interest rate environments and different consumer likes and dislikes. It's to me, it's a very incredible skill set that I have a lot of appreciation for somebody like you that's done it, and the people that listen to this podcast and the people that do it. I always tip my hat because I think it's amazing.
Well, I think the best thing about this business, the outcome of it all, is that you can change people's lives.
Yeah.
It really can. Like you said, if you just come armed with the willingness to work, I like the idea of a ready smile because it helps show people you care and you hustle and you help your teammates. I've seen dishwashers become restaurant owners. I've had the pleasure of people that have worked for me over the years. I think something like 14 or 15 of them have become company CEOs on their own right. They did the work. I might have helped them along the way, but they did the work, and that's phenomenal. And even my own story allowed me to rise to the level of a CEO. And I started as a houseman in a hotel, setting up meeting rooms.
Yeah.
So it's a great business, and it's gone through a lot of cycles. I mean, it's changed a lot since I got into it. I was in the advent of casual dining. Now it's much more about fast casual, and that's okay. This is an ever-changing world, and as long as you're paying attention to what's happening in the world around you, we have a symbiotic relation with our customers. We got to give them
Mm.
what they want. And coming out of COVID, the restaurant industry they have really struggled, and we haven't really finished that. I mean, look at the number of bankruptcies going on right now. And some are decent brands. They're not like, bad people doing bad things. They just got caught in an economic downturn through things they weren't prepared to do. Who saw it coming? And I think we've had three major bankruptcies and one pending right now that could be a very big one. And it's easy to try and find fault, but I don't. I have a lot of empathy for people because they do the best they can with the information available. And the world's still full of uncertainty. I call it a whitewater world. And if you've ever been whitewater rafting, we're still in class five waves. It's not that
Mm.
class one, row, row, row your boat. It's class five, like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And that's every single day. You don't know what's going to be around the next turn. You don't see that boulder in the water. You don't see the possibility of tipping over. And that's what a restaurant president has to deal with every single day. And ultimately, the skill one has to develop is the ability to one is to stay calm, is to gather a lot of data in a short amount of time and find a way, but mostly is to inspire the team to support them because they believe in their leadership. And to me, culture is the secret weapon. You can be really smart, but if you have an unhealthy culture, it doesn't matter. You're toxic. But if you have a healthy culture, you have to be the smartest person in the world. You just got to look around and pay attention to the changing dynamics. You'll get through it.
What is the Drucker quote? Culture eats strategy for breakfast,
For lunch.
for lunch.
For lunch, but now it's probably, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert because
I was
that's
gonna
that's what
say
it is.
breakfast seems like a big thing. These maybe it is. Yeah. I'm well. Oh gosh, there's a couple of things you just brought up that I want to expand on a little bit. One of them is culture, so don't let me forget. But the other one is that I love the analogy of the Class Five Rapids, and I say that only because I went to the Golly up in West Virginia like 5 or 6 years ago. We had a guys trip up there. I didn't know what I was getting into. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds great. And it was interesting because they prep you and then you get in and they're like, look, if we if this boat capsizes, if we flip over, here's what you need to do. And they hammer it. So it's very clear what you need to do.
Right.
But dude, we flipped over and I panicked. I was like, I forgot all the stuff I was supposed to do. And then you like calm down and you remember it. But it's like we flipped over. I was under the boat. And this is classic because I'm like, you get out and everybody's telling their story of like what happened. I'm like, I was under the boat forever, man. Like, and then the funniest part is we flipped where there was they had like cameras there because it's one of the like they have cameras at all the big rapids, and you go back and you watch the video and they're like, you think you were underwater for like 10 minutes, not 10 minutes, but you think you were underwater for like 20 seconds and it was really like 3 seconds because you
Yeah.
see it happen
Well,
and you're
time
like,
slows down when you're in
time
that kind of
slows down.
situation. Yeah, you're alive.
Yeah,
You're in the present moment, my friend, and their time is very elastic.
but
I went I went whitewater rafting in Oregon after my daughter's wedding up there. And we went on a boat, same thing they teach you to, when you hit something hard, because we had to go over a 25-foot fall.
oh
And
my
so
God.
these falls were there, so you got to get ready, and they want you to just get low in the boat, low center of gravity, grab onto the rope along the outside of the raft, hang on to your paddle. Don't let your paddle fly around because you'll hurt somebody. And we practiced it, and then we pulled off to the side to wait our turn to go over the falls because there are a lot of boats coming along. And we see this big burly guy leading like 4 or 5 women. And as they go over the edge, they lift their paddles up in the air like a big
Mhm.
hurrah. And we just said, oh God, no. Because everything that they told us not to do, they did.
They
This guy
did.
obviously wasn't paying attention. And so then it was our turn to go over, and we went over, and you go into the water. You absolutely shoot into the water, and you come out. That, like I said, it lasts 2 seconds, but it feels like a half hour. And as we get out and pull over, everyone pulls over. There's those ladies, broken arm, broken leg. They had
Ooh.
gashes, on their foreheads and on their face because the paddles were flying everywhere. Totally unnecessary, but it's a good example of what happens if you're not paying attention, you're not prepared. And that's why I use the metaphor for the business we're in. You got to teach your team how to prepare for some unknown thing. You don't know what it is. I mean, the word responsibility literally means the ability to respond. And
Mm.
the leader has to set the tone for that to make sure that people are aware of what could happen. Nothing could have prepared us for something like COVID. But to your point, it could quits in midstream, someone's, having sex with someone in the storeroom, whatever the insanity goes on in this business, a kitchen fire. We just have to be ready and alert at all times.
And the leader has to be, I like this happened. The guy, our leader, told us this. It's like pretty likely. We
Yeah.
may. Here's what you do. Listen to me. You'll be okay. I freak out. I panic. And I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I know. Okay, I remember I'm supposed to. And then like you start remembering, and then if you have a leader that's built confidence and you trust that leader, then you go, if I just do what that guy told me, I'll be all right. And sure enough, we all wound up like settling down, and we did it. And we all got back in the boat, and he's like, I got you. Like, guys, like that's all you got to do. They said that every year up there at the Golly, this is up there, in West Virginia, it's like 1 month every year they open it up, and they said that people that don't make it are the ones that panic. Like they just panic and they freeze.
Yeah.
It's like one of the things they do is if you get too far away, they throw a rope. And they said sometimes people are so panicked they don't even grab the rope because they're having like a panic attack, like an
Yeah.
anxiety attack. And you've got to, as a leader, instill that calm confidence that even if you might be sweating it, which I know everybody was during COVID, um, stay calm and inspire your team, which goes to culture. And I want to talk about culture because we've been talking a lot about that on this podcast over the last year. And I find that, having done this as long as we have with Schedule Fly and having some restaurant groups that have, really leaned into culture, and I've gotten to know them, and I see that it just seems that no matter what happens, it all falls back on that camaraderie and that teamwork and that love for each other and that business, and that what they're a part of is more than just themselves. And you always find that they have just a great culture. And in fact, even like I think about I'm sure you know a lot of them because you know a lot more people than I do and a lot more groups. But I think of Indigo Road Hospitality Group, Steve Palmer's group, and they have, I had their director of culture on here. I mean, that's a title within that organization, and I find that to be fascinating and awesome because that's somebody whose sole job is just like the curator of the culture in that organization. And I don't see it as much as I would like think that I would or hope that I would, I guess.
Well, culture is everyone's responsibility. My metaphor for culture, it's another water-based metaphor. It's like a giant swimming pool, and every one of the companies stand in the swimming pool, and it's everyone's job to keep the water clean.
Mm.
Therefore, there is no peeing section in the swimming pool.
Yeah.
Okay, because what you do in one spot goes everywhere, and
Yeah.
it is everyone's responsibility. And it's not about a kumbaya moment. This is not Oprah Winfrey, Dr. Phil kind of stuff. This is about, you said earlier, Everyone takes care of each other. Everyone's got each other's back. And it starts by having a sense of purpose. Why are we doing what we're doing? Yeah, we're serving food, we're serving drinks and all that kind of stuff, but it's more than that. You're fulfilling a need someone has for a meal at that point in time, or a meeting place for their family and friends, or a business luncheon, or whatever the case may be. And a culture that cares about each other can care about their guests. And the leader sets the tone for that by setting the example by caring for his team. And we've done a lot of turnaround works. And I'll tell you, every time we've done a turnaround, it's the employees that turn the business around. Management's just got to create the context for that people feel rewarded, feel connected, feel engaged. But the employees are the ones that do it because one employee talks to more guests than a manager ever will, much less if you're higher up in an organization, kind of in the ivory tower. We've worked with a lot of companies where the executives never even go into their own restaurants, which is shocking to me. Regardless of what kind of restaurant it is, if that's the company you work at, you have a responsibility to be there and be present and help, you know, fuel fuel that culture. Make sure they see you up at the front lines and caring. Not easy to do, but there's some phenomenal leaders out there that do an amazing job. So this business really shows what people are made of. One of the expressions that I like to use is that pressure reveals character. And you want to know
Mm,
about somebody, wait until they get in a tough spot. Wait until the
yeah,
pressure's really on and see how they behave. Then you see what they're really made of. Can't find that in a job interview, but life will
no,
give you an opportunity to learn very quickly. And you got someone who's a good foxhole buddy, you want to attach yourself to that person because they're going to be good through the trials and tribulations of any situation. And it doesn't have to just be business. I mean, people are living lives. They get sick, they get parents, they get ill, they get kids to take care, of, a lot of responsibilities. I was just talking to someone the other day that got a job as an assistant manager for a company that they have to fly to another city to go to training. Well, this is going to be their job. He's got a 6-month-old child and a wife, so he brought him along, and they sit in the motel all day long while he's off training for 10, 12 hours. And that's their life. And I was thinking about that, saying, good God, we know all the stories that are out there. We have no clue. Undercover Boss does a pretty decent job of giving you a sense of what people go through, and the lucky few who are featured get some reward. But there's millions of them out there like that that are just trying to keep it together as best they can. When I
mhm,
talk to, leadership teams, I'm in a nice conference room, and I'll ask them, what's the average hourly employee make in your company? Most of them know what the managers make, but they don't know what the average hourly employee makes. If you're on minimum wage, even because minimum wage hasn't changed in years, and no one really, well, some companies actually do pay minimum wage, which is unbelievable to me. But let's say you're making $15 an hour, and they call that a living wage in some cities. That's not a living wage. That's a survival wage.
yes,
$15 an hour, it's about 30 grand a year. Try and live in any city of any size on 30 grand a year with a family. Impossible. And these people have two jobs. They may not have a car, but they still got to shoulder education, clothing, insurance, so forth and so on if they can afford that. And then you say, well, I need you to smile more. I want you to be more engaged with my guests. That's a tough thing to do when you're just struggling to make ends meet. And I'm not trying to be, bleeding hard about it. It's just the reality. It's economics. If you're just struggling to survive, how capable are you really giving more? Now, you can create an environment where even at $15 an hour, people do get engaged. They're treated with courtesy, with respect, with kindness, and you give them a future. That's the thing about this industry. This industry has the ability to grow, and you don't have to stay at the $15 an hour. You can go beyond that. But it takes a leader to be able to point that path to somebody and say, hey, look, I started in your position, and this is where I've come. Again, I started setting up meeting tables. It took me a long time, but I became a president of a company through a lot of hard
yeah.
work and good fortune and mentors. And it's the combination of all those things. They say in that book, The Alchemist, when you set your mind to what you desire, the universe conspires to give it to you.
One of my favorite books. Love that book. If you haven't read that book, listeners, The Alchemist is awesome. Okay, you said a lot of things I want to touch on. Number one is this is one of my biggest questions I'm always trying to figure out is how do you get people that are making $15 an hour to care at a level like it is so challenging. Like if you own the business or you're the CEO, whatever, you run the business, you get it, you get the big picture. But if I've got two jobs, kids at home, life stresses, barely scraping by, how do you get people to have that greater sense of purpose? I mean, it makes sense logically, like, hey, if you smile more and you're better, then we'll be more successful and then I can pay you. But it's like the reality on the ground is like that's really, really hard. Then you add in, okay, well, maybe we pay more, but goodness gracious, restaurants are, I mean, like right now, everything has gone up so much, and the consumer's kind of going, I don't know if I can afford to go out. Like, how do I go out right now and spend $16 on a fast food burger and fry? Like, it's just well, like you said, man, we're not out of it. We're still in
Yeah.
it's a very big dilemma, and it's very hard to figure out.
Yeah, well, and that's you said yourself a couple of different things here. So first off, the starting point for that employee is to sit down with them, and the manager's responsibility is to do that and talk to them. Get their life story, get their origin story. Where are they from? What's their family like? What was it like growing up? What's going on with their lives right now? Do you have two jobs? You only have one job? Whatever it is, find out about them. Just take an interest in them. Doesn't take long. 15, 20-minute conversation, you can find out a lot about a person. And you can also share a little bit of your life story and point out some of the things that you struggled with and how you overcame them. And it gives them hope and maybe lets them know that they can overcome whatever obstacles they face because it's all about perspective. Their life situation is their life situation. But if you can give them a broader perspective of what could come in the future, and when I've done that, and a lot of people have low horizons. When I was growing up, I
Mm,
just wanted a good used car and a nice apartment.
yep.
I've gone well past that, but I didn't know any better. No one told me there was a possibility to do more. But when someone says, "Hey, you," and everyone is special in some way. Everyone's got some talent, and if you apply yourself, even more so, right? Because then you can really realize your potential. And so, what is their potential? What do they want to try and achieve? And if you can help them get a little glimmer of hope, and let encourage them to come to you with their thoughts and ideas about how things could be better. Now you begin to engage it because you show them that you care. Okay, so that's that. Now go back to the guest who's essentially paying for a fast food meal, the equivalent of the hour that employee's working to get paid. Right, one's getting $15 an hour, the other's paying $16 for burger, coke, and fries. The equation for value is pretty straightforward. Value is equals the food plus the beverage plus the environment plus the service over price. That equals value. That's like a scientific formula. You can calculate it if you want to. You can do it for yourself. You can do it for your competition, and you can explain it to your employees. And if you have to take a price increase, that's the denominator. Then the numerator, the food, the beverage, the service, and the ambiance has to improve, has to go up so that you keep your value or enhance it. And one of the things that you can do to enhance that is to make sure that the intangible part of a guest experience is the employee's willingness to engage with them to provide them something memorable. Everyone talks about having a guest experience. And the way I break it down, I define experience by an activity fused with emotion. Okay. And if you think about your earliest memory, and I ask groups of people this all the time. Some people say it's 3 or 4 or 5. Once in a while, I guess someone said 8. They didn't have a memory to their 8. Oh my God. But anyway, so if it's if
Wow.
it's if it's 3 years old and you tumble down the stairs, from the second floor because you were crawling on the ground, the guard wasn't up. You just had a activity fused with emotion. You
Mm,
tumble down the
yeah.
stairs, you had fear. Or you had a birthday party and a clown comes in with a spray of balloons and it's joyful and all that kind of stuff, or a puppy licks your face. An activity fused with emotion. A restaurant experience is an activity that can be fused with emotion if the employees are trained to engage guests emotionally. I think one of the best ones that do it, besides Danny Meyer, his restaurants at Union Square Hospitality, is Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A
Yeah.
absolutely understands this. They know that it's about the emotion. Brene Brown, one of my favorite quotes of hers, says that we think we're rational beings with occasional emotion. We're really emotional beings with occasional rationality. And once
Yep.
you understand that and you realize that your job as a restaurant manager or a company leader is to ensure a positive emotional outcome, you discover the secret that's just laying right in front of you. That all you really want when a guest leaves your operation, your restaurant, is to have the desire to return. And I see
Mm,
these surveys that ask somebody, do you have an intention to return? Well, an intention is a logical thing. that doesn't make sense to me. If the desire to return is there, they'll come back because desire is an emotion. Desire is movement. Okay. If
Yeah.
I leave a restaurant feeling really, really special, like the old Cheers song, I'm coming back.
Mm,
Now it may have been the food was exceptional, or it may have been that the restaurant was beautiful, but I guarantee you, without that secret ingredient, that employee who really gives you a level of attention that you deserve, and it doesn't have to be a fine dining restaurant. It could be a cashier at a counter restaurant. It could be anyone. It could be the person wiping the tables in a dining room with a ready smile. Whatever it takes to do that. And the funny thing about it, the amount of time to do that is the exact same amount of time it takes not to do it. So
yeah.
but it is intentional and it is conscious leadership. And that's what it comes about. And I love the restaurants where you just see them do that in a beautiful, beautiful way. And it makes a difference. And again, the work that we do, when I've seen employees who, when I initially meet them, are just solemn. They don't smile. They kind of stare at you and you walk up to the counter like, what do you want? And then later on, through the proper type of training and awareness and showing them that they can make a difference in someone's lives, they have this beautiful smile on their face when they see you approach the counter. It's magnificent to see that because they feel empowered. They recognize that they can make someone's day very special by just how they interact with them.
All right, y'all, check it out. Stick is our sponsor, connectwithstick.com. This is an incredible text and marketing tool. So check this out. Engage your customers, drive foot traffic, and increase sales at your bar, your restaurant, your store with Stick. Your targeted messages reach your audience instantly, promoting special offers and events. Look, 98% of texts are seen within 3 minutes. So this thing is simple and it's effective and it works. Elevate your marketing strategy and watch your customer base grow with the most direct way to connect with your customers through text. Start today and see results on the very first text. Stick is a better way to connect with your customers and the easiest way to increase your sales. www.connectwithstick.com. And again, that's www.connectwithstick.com. Folks, this is an awesome sponsor. It's an awesome business. We at ScheduleFly know them well. We know that the results are there. This is a highly effective tool, and it's run by a business run by great people. Check them out, connectwithstick.com. Man, you know something, it's really wild because so here you and I are talking. We live like what, like 5 minutes from each other or whatever we've determined. And I did not know you until a couple of months ago. And we were introduced by Dave Query, who you met, I think, at a conference or something last
Yep, in
January.
Florida. Yeah.
Have you spent much time with him? Like, have
No,
you taught him? Okay.
just a couple times.
So Dave's out there in Boulder, and he's got Big Red F Restaurant Group. He's been in the business for 40 years now. They've got, I don't know how many locations now, 16, 18. But if you go out and you go to Boulder, Denver, and you go into one of Dave and Dana Query's places, Big Red F, Jack's Fish House or Centro or the Post, like they get it. Like they get it as well as anybody. Like I'm not saying they're the best. I'm saying, but there's not many I know that are better at just what you just talked about. It just Dave has always understood the importance of the intention that goes behind every interaction, how important every interaction with every guest is, and making them feel it's this what you're talking about is psychology, right? Like it's what Oprah says, like the one common thread amongst every human being is just wanting to feel validated, right? Like people want to feel validated, and it doesn't take a lot to make them feel validated. It's like 3 seconds of eye contact and a
Right.
smile, and knowing that you're the only person in the world right now with all this going on that I am. There. I'm not talking to you while I'm also scanning the room. I'm like there, and that presence is so key. And like you said, doesn't take that long. But it's funny because Dave introduced us, and here you and I live near each other, and you mentioned Chick-fil-A, which is I had my son work a couple years ago. His first job was at Chick-fil-A for that very reason. And then my youngest son, I'm gonna have him work there next summer for that very reason. And then there's a Fred, there's a Publix right there, that new Publix on Providence, right up, like very close to probably where you live, very close to me on the way into Waxhaw. I call them the Chick-fil-A of supermarkets because I go to that Publix, even though Harris Teeter's a little bit closer. I go to the Publix because I just think they get it. Like I go
Well,
in
they offer
there
to put your groceries away in your car, regardless of
and
the size,
they,
right? They're
they
extra courtesy.
smile,
Yeah.
they ask if they can help. It's just like it's this one little thing, which is your point. It's like doesn't take that much. It's a commodity, and I look. I could go to Aldi and get stuff cheaper, but so I'm not a price buyer. I'm an experienced buyer. I just like being there, and every time, I mean, my family laughs at me. It's like my wife will be like, "Hey, we need." I'll go, and she's like, "You love? Why do you love Publix?" I'm like, "Because every time I go, it makes me smile. Somebody smiles to me, ask how I'm doing. They ask me like how my day is going. They're like, "Hey, can I help you with anything?" That doesn't like that's it. But they get that just getting their employees to do that makes a difference. And I think of that like I actually my kids waited too late. I actually wanted my daughter to work there this summer and they're hired out, right? Like it's also hard to get a job at Chick-fil-A. Why? Because the dang culture is so good and you know if you work there you're going to learn these skill sets that you can take anywhere, but it's not easy, uh but it's worth that extra effort
Well,
because the
think about what
consumer
you just
gets it,
said.
the
You just said
employee
something
gets it.
very interesting, that they're hired out. They're not hired anymore. How many restaurants in America are not hired anymore because they have too many applicants? How many
Exactly.
restaurants are dying to get employees to come in there? And that shows you the power of culture to attract people.
That's
Uh,
right.
and yeah, they pay well. I mean, they do pay well. They do that. I mean, they're $8 million AUV on 6 days a week. They can afford to pay, but that didn't happen by mistake. That happened with intention. And it starts by the culture they create internally, which then permeates to the guests, and it becomes part of the community. That's the other thing. I mean, I'm a conscious capitalist, and we talk about a stakeholder mentality. So it's not just shareholders; it's also the employees, it's your guests, it's your vendors, it's your community. You have five major stakeholders that if your business is developed to satisfy their needs, chances are high that you will do very, very well. Not always. I mean, there's companies that have very, very good cultures, but they do fail because they didn't take care of the other side of the equation. There's that business
Mhm.
side. You got to make sure that the numbers add up, that you're watching your P's and Q's, that you're increasing profitability, you're growing sales. And that's why any type of business, not just the restaurant business, is very challenging in today's world.
Well, you mentioned some bankruptcies and that we are still in these class five rapids. I feel like I'm like this is very anecdotal, and you are going to know a lot more about this. So I want your opinion. I feel like just generally speaking, we had 10, 12 years of quote free money. I mean, like it was easy to get money to grow a
Right.
business and expand. Now we're back to what's actually just normal rates. But it's if you built a model on that, it gets very challenging. I feel like for a long time it just seemed like we got maybe a little oversaturated with restaurants. They were opening all over the place. Everybody's opening restaurants. Everybody's growing. Everybody's expanding. Boom, COVID hits. PPP helps, Restaurant Restoration Fund. Now that money's gone, and now like the other side, it's like the tide went back out.
Well,
And
that's what Warren Buffett says. You know who's swimming naked when the tide goes out.
well, there you go.
and
That's
and
right.
that's what it is. Yeah, and it was very inexpensive money. A lot of people threw good money after bad ideas, and yeah, we had too
Yeah.
many restaurants, but we had too many restaurants in certain areas. There are still food deserts out there. I was just talking to a guy that I've known for a long time this morning, who had some recent failures. I mean, he's gone through some tough times, but he ended up opening up a restaurant in Boise, and he lives in
Mm.
San Diego, and it's doing phenomenally well. Unbelievable, because he says there's just really no good restaurants up there. And so now he's looking at doing more restaurants in Boise, because San Diego's heavily saturated, but places like
Right.
Boise aren't. And there's a lot of cities that are lovely cities. I spent a lot of time in Jacksonville, Florida, because some of my business partnerships that I have. And this one restaurant came up from Miami. Miami's a great restaurant town, but very crowded, very competitive. They bring their
Mm.
concept up to Jacksonville. They're crushing it. They're doing more profit than they are in Miami, in Jacksonville, which is secondary market, because they want good restaurants. So I think sometimes it's just, not going to where everyone else is and looking at opportunities in places that would really appreciate a great experience and a great restaurant. So there's still opportunity out there.
Yeah, well, there's also people that are, if you look at the long-term demographics, people are moving to the Southeast and the Southwest, and they're priced out of now places like Miami, but they're not priced out of Jacksonville. And so there's a lot of growth in places like that. And by the way, I'm totally curious if you know the Jacksonville market. Have you ever been to a place down there called Taco Lou? Are you familiar with them?
I'm not.
Check them out next time you're down there.
I will.
Taco Lou's been around forever and just a phenomenal place. I was down in Jacksonville a couple years ago. I found it to be a great place that I would not be surprised if there's a lot more folks that want to enter that market. I think it would be there's a lot of people that sort of like South Georgia. It's not real. It's very different than Miami.
Oh
It's
yeah.
a little
Oh yeah.
more
It's
like
like,
South
yeah.
Florida.
Yeah. Florida's like three states
Yeah,
with
right.
with a
It really is.
with a tourist hub in the middle.
Do you think like so you're in the care? I mean, like I always, I would grow up and we would go down to Georgetown, South Carolina, where my mom's from. So from Charlotte down to Georgetown, I mean, draw a straight line. You're going through a lot of like, small towns that
Yeah.
as I was growing up, to me it was sad. Like we'd ride through boarded up, like 5 stores on Main Street when there's, 50 storefronts. And I would always just be kind of melancholy. I was like, this is just sad. Like it just makes me sad. It made me sad to think of people living there. But, those towns are now the places that are starting to see some revitalization because people are moving down from the Northeast or they're, remote work has
Hmm.
enabled like towns like that to
Yeah.
attract art and talent and chefs and places where you can go in and start something amazing that people will come from places for. And I mean, look, restaurants, like, to me, like they're the epicenter of you talk about culture in the restaurant, but then just culture in general. Like why is this town or that town or this city or that, like, why is it great? You go like, tell me the reasons this place is great. I mean, like, why is Charleston so great? Boom, restaurant. Like restaurants is always like really high on the list, and they can really be on the leading edge, I think, of revitalizing a lot of these cities and towns that got bled out from manufacturing and everything moving decades ago. But now people are like, well, wait a minute, we can move to this small town in South Carolina and get 5 times the home with a fraction of the taxes I had and land. And then now there's like a couple of good restaurants coming in there, and people can, to your point of Boise, I mean, good operators can go find these places and just
Yeah.
go in there and be on the front end of that.
Yeah. Well, the Southeast is the last frontier. I mean, people are now discovering it. I
Yeah.
imagine sometimes, as we just had a little heat wave here, what it was like when there was no air conditioning. Now you know why they had
Oh,
homes with porches, right? That's where they had a porch. They had to sit outside. They didn't want to sit inside. That's for sure. But fortunately, the technology allows people to live in places they couldn't live before. And you're right. I always find it fascinating. In Europe, the small towns have great restaurants because they're close to where the
mhm.
food's grown.
Yeah.
When I moved to Charlotte, I was shocked at how many farms are around Charlotte. I mean, we're just like a breadbasket. I had no idea. And I go to the farmers markets, and they're just phenomenal fresh food. So everything you want that's organic, it's here. But
Yep.
people just didn't realize it. So you're correct. Modern technology, remote work, so forth and so on, is giving people an opportunity to live in what used to be considered obscure places, live very, very well, and yet a full life. And if you got to go to the big city every now and then, go to the big city.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay. I want to ask you about um, restaurant technology because you know a lot about this space and you've worked with some of these businesses. I'm not asking you about like scheduling or schedule fly. What I want to ask about more is like, there's been, again, with a lot of that cheap money came just a massive amount of restaurant technology over the last decade. when restaurants traditionally, were later on the adoption curve with a lot of technology. And now there's so much technology that I just don't even understand. Like, I feel overwhelmed as an outsider watching this. I can't imagine being a restaurant owner or operator trying to figure out, like, okay, I'm going to solve for fill in the bank, like this spoke in the wheel of a need for my business. So let's see if there's any good technology out there. Oh, there's 62 companies that do that. Like,
Right.
I do feel like I'm very curious what's going to happen over the next few years too, because a lot of money came in, a lot of VC money came in, a lot of technology. Now your business model better work because that money's not coming in as easily. But what do you see? Because you're so dialed in, Fred, and you talk to so many people, and like, is there too much tech out there? Is it going to all consolidate? I'm just like very broadly asking these questions because I'd love to get your thoughts just in general on the world of restaurant tech.
Well, let me start off by just creating a context for it. So to keep it simple, I work off of a quadrant.
Okay.
And so one quadrant is going to be your classic back of the house technology that's been around the longest, POS systems. And in there, you might have schedule fly doing scheduling. You might have, temperature readings out of your walk-in or your line. All the operational technology, KDS systems, things all happen in the back of the house. And that's when that's been around for a long, long time. And then if you move forward to the front of the house, more recent technologies, digital menu boards, there might be a kiosk. Kiosks are really big right now. There might be some sort of tablet device on the table that can serve as an electronic table tent. And there's things in the front of, Wi-Fi in the front of the house that capture people's names for loyalty and so forth and so on. And that's gotten a lot of attention. And the next one that's been very, very sexy for a while is the ones that are on your device. Okay, so this is revenue generating technology. Your customers ordering third party delivery, or they're perusing a menu, or they're cutting the line, or they're making reservations. And that's been very sexy. That's attracted a lot of people in the last few years, very, very much so. And all those three quadrants generate a lot of data about your guests and
Mm-hmm.
productivity metrics and stuff like that. The fourth quadrant to me is the data. And that's where the money's going to be. That's where it's all going to be at. Because with all that data swirling around, we have tons of information and we're drowning in data but starved for knowledge. And that's where the difference comes around. So, are there too many technology companies? Probably the answer is yes, like there's too many restaurants. And it's understanding that regardless of how many there are, as the leader of an organization, your responsibility is to make sure that your tech stack, which is the term everyone uses, has a holistic view that is formed with the idea that this data ultimately is what's going to benefit me. Cava Grill had a data scientist when they had 10 restaurants. It's no mistake that they were able to buy Zoe's over 200 units when they were very small and are now converting them all to Cavas and doing very well as a public company because they got it. They knew that ultimately that intimate relationship with your guest, which is a combination of the emotion we talked about, but also the data, understanding what their needs are, what they buy, how often they come, their frequency, all the metrics that are available through that data is very, very powerful. So the thing to keep in mind is that one, the technology all needs to talk to each other. That's really, really important. If they don't talk to each other, they don't share a common database at some point, you're going to get some trouble. Okay. And we've seen that happen, especially during COVID. People were just jumping at the first thing they could for third party delivery. And they might have
Mm.
gotten a system that saved them at the moment, but it didn't incorporate to everything else. They had to go back and redo it. The other thing is we're going through the disruption of the POS system. POS systems used to be a server client inside the back office of the restaurant. Now it's gone to the cloud. So you got, the Squares, the Toasts, the Par Brinks, and then you have the old timers like NCR and Micros trying to get to the cloud in some way, shape, or form. That's very disruptive because I remember having to go beg a POS company to let this app through the back door. They go, it's $1,000 a restaurant, and all it is an API. But they
Right.
said, no,
Yeah.
$1,000 a restaurant. They saw it as a way to make money. And these other POS systems are just open API. Come on in. It's not a walled garden. And they're the
Right.
ones that are benefiting from it. So and then with all that said, and that's what we do a lot of that kind of work to help rationalize for people, is there's many startups that are really features, they're not really companies. They just sort of do something that's nice to do, but it doesn't mean it's a company. It's got to have broad application. It's got to solve a real problem. It's got to eliminate pain. You help found a scheduling company. Doing a schedule by hand is pain. Okay.
Mm,
And if you can simplify that process, you're going to get adoption.
yeah.
Okay. And some of your competitors have done that as well. And so there's companies now that have solved that for third party delivery or people coming to pick up and Bluetooth enablement so that if someone is approaching the drive, that they're in the parking lot, run a delivery out there or fire the food or however you choose to use that technology. And it's about
Yeah.
putting it all together very intelligently. It's hard to decipher. For a long time, I used to keep track of all the different companies in the quadrants I was just mentioning, and then I couldn't keep up with it anymore because it's
Right.
now thousands, not hundreds in some categories. But we can still remain current just by, I attend a lot of restaurant technology shows. I invest in tech companies. I talk to a lot of people, and it's evolving unbelievably. I mean, there's things that we're going to be able to do from a technology standpoint that's going to help make restaurants have a better relationship with their guests, have a better relationship with their employees, and also increase productivity.
Mm,
What I love to talk about Bar Taco. Scott Lawton, who I've known for a few years, recognized that he was going to have almost a permanent employee shortage. And so he built his restaurant operation during COVID so that he could eliminate the classical roles that people held. He could work with 30% less staff, use an app to enable the guests to place their order, reorders, and pay. Yet his staff still would provide the service and the hospitality that we spoke about. They were trained in that. So while a server in the old days might have had 5 tables, now they have 15, but they don't have to take the orders. The guest is doing all that kind of stuff. Someone's running the food, but they're there to make sure that people are smiling, making sure that the margaritas are cold, the chips are hot, and so forth and so on. And everyone gets paid $55,000 an hour. Everybody, except the bartenders. They make more because they're at the bar. They get 55 plus whatever tips they make. Everyone, including the dishwasher, makes $55,000 an hour. It's a bit egalitarian. That's a lot of money for that kind of operation. And of course, he's got a lot of people trying to get a job there because they know it's a healthy culture. They know you pay well. You're going to get benefits. You're going to do very, very well. And that's what I love about this industry. It's so creative. You just got to step back and say, wait a minute, why am I doing it this way? Because it's always been done that way. Well, you can't survive like that anymore. You've got to
yeah.
think out of the box, literally say, I need to rebuild my business in a specific way, count on having a great culture. And now let's solve this problem we have with, shortages, higher wages, higher commodity prices. That's reality. And if you understand that price value equation I mentioned earlier, you can come up with an experience for your guests that'll say, that was worth it. And I can't wait to come back.
Yeah. You've got, so in that situation, you have let fewer people, but those people, they're more of a, they're more of a just a guest experience person than somebody who's just like hustling tables and trying to get everything done. It's just making sure everything's cool, making
Yeah.
sure everything's good, making sure everybody's happy. And you can
Yeah.
do that with a smile and not a lot of stress. And I like that model a lot. I think that's this is Bar Taco.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Fewer people, more tech. I mean, look, tech's going to just keep
Well,
coming,
fewer people, more tech, and they get better paid. And they
better
work as a
pay,
team. They work
which
what you
means,
said earlier. If you're a good teammate, you got to work as a team. Hey, at Whole Foods, any new employee after 30 days, the rest of the staff decides whether they stay or not. They vote. Because you
yeah,
might have fooled the manager in the interview. You can't fool your teammates. Either
can't
you're
fool.
pulling your weight or you're not. And I
Well, I
encourage
think it's,
restaurant operators to do that. Let your team decide whether someone stays after 30 days. And let the
yeah,
person know, your teammates will determine whether you stay with us or not. That's
yeah,
a great add to the culture. You empower your team to choose their teammates. You picked them, you drafted them, they pick them.
yeah. Do you think so? I always wonder, with all this new tech and AI, like when we're going to have, like, I imagine McDonald's one day having so much tech that maybe there's like one human being in there and that person's a technical person to just make sure the equipment's doing everything that needs to be done. It's, cooking and, serving and handing out. Like you could almost have robots doing everything. And then on the other side, you've got the traditional sit down place where you want real human beings with real emotions and real smiles and real intention and real presence. I always wonder about that kind of stuff because it seems like it kind of things barbell over time. And if you go to McDonald's, do you necessarily need a lot of people or do you need tech and just efficiency? The flip side of that point that I'm making is I look at Chick-fil-A and I know they got tech, but they got a lot of people in there and that seems to work really well. So I bet I'm sure you think about this stuff. I'm curious what you think about that.
Tech enables you to do the things you value better, faster. Okay. Um, Serving bad food in a poor manner faster with technology is not a winning formula. If
Yeah.
you value hospitality, you value quality food, you value service, you value cleanliness, tech will enable and project and amplify that to a better degree. But you have to have those fundamental values first.
Mm,
It's just like a bad person goes out and buys a new wardrobe. Doesn't make them a better person. They're just a
right.
better dressed bad person.
Yeah.
But if you've got someone that really understands from the inside out what it means to care, they may not be the best looking, but damn, they're attractive,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's what it is. And restaurants are the same way. Will technology, is it necessary? What you need to do? Of course you will. And it's really cobots, Will can a pizza maker start having the pizza made by a robot? Yes. Can a burger flipping robot like Flippy help them with the burger? Of course. But a human being may still have to dress it or is going to hand it to somebody with a smile. There's nothing wrong with technology. I mean, I use a washing machine at home. I don't want to go down to the river and wash my clothes against the rocks. It just
Right.
doesn't make sense. I have plumbing. I turn the faucet, the water comes out. I want to go to the river with a bucket to bring my water up. So that's all advances in technology. So we'll get used to that part of it, but you can never replace hospitality with strictly things that are mechanical. That is
Mm.
different.
What's your biggest concern right now in the world of hospitality?
Well, I mean, I have several. One continues to be that this ever-changing whitewater world we live in exhausts people after a while
Hmm.
because when you're constantly vigilant, you just can't seem to take a break. It can break some people, and you see good people struggle because of that.
Hmm.
So the human toll it has on people concerns me.
Yep.
The capital environment we're in with the interest rates being so high makes it difficult to grow. I mean, the companies that made it during COVID were the ones that had lines of credit at the bank. Well, those are the big boys. Prior
Yep.
to COVID, the independents were kicking the pants out of the chains because they had a much
Yep.
better guest experience, but they didn't have the resources financially. So some great independents got shut down during COVID. They're not coming back. But
Yep.
access to capital I think, is another issue. And then the thing too that the bandit they get ripped off is that as an industry, there's no retirement, there's no safety net. I mean, we're the last ones to get relief from the government, and yet we are the first ones to shut down.
Yeah.
And that is why we had like 500,000 people, that we were short when COVID sort of ended. It's gotten better. I mean, if you look at all the employment things, the majority of the new jobs are restaurant service jobs. If you really look at the statistics, and now it's at 4.1%, but all those new jobs that have been created, we have more new jobs now than before COVID, which is good to hear. But it's got to become a better job. If we can figure out a way to make it a better job so that people can actually live a decent life, not some, splendiferous life, but a decent life. So it's not a living wage. It's truly a living wage, not just survival wage, where people can, pay for their kids' school and clothes and have a nice roof over their head. Then I think it's going to help that. But the economics do have to shift. We have subsidized the dining habits for a long time. It's like a gallon of milk doesn't cost that. I mean, the government subsidizes milk. We make enough milk. We pour milk down the drain because we can produce so much because of our productivity. That's an example of that. You're in farm country. You understand that. I'm not saying to get rid of the subsidies. No, I'm not saying that. But it's just some things just aren't balanced with an equal. Water gets its equilibrium. We don't have that. Things are not what they appear to be. And if we can figure out a way to make these jobs have meaning and have value and pay people decently, and then in turn give the guests an experience that they really feel respected, feel honored, feel validated, then it'll work. And we're getting there. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there.
The human toll is an interesting thing to me, Fred. The industry for so long had this work hard play hard mentality, and there was a lot of um, unfortunate results of that: mental health challenges, substance abuse challenges. I think the industry has moved in a very positive direction around that. I think of things like, again, if you know, I think of Steve Palmer and Ben's friends, and what they're doing. There's still ways to go, but I feel like there's generally a healthier culture now. And I know that, I've talked to some folks that have been around a long time. They kind of miss that because they're like, hey, that's where the camaraderie was built. But I look at it as like you don't need to have that to build that camaraderie. And it's a tough place because you're surrounded with a lot of behavior and a lot of access to a lot of substances that can cause big problems in life, and it is a very hard grind. And so there is a need for relief and release when a 12-hour long day, big night, hard, tough shift and stuff. But there's more resources now, and I think there's more education that there are other ways to find balance in your life than through going out and doing unhealthy things.
Right.
Are you seeing more progress in that direction as well?
Yeah, not as much as maybe we'd hope. There's a company in Washington, D.C. called Founding Farmers, and one of the founders there, uh, does a great job talking about mental health crisis in this industry. And he has set up a fund in his company so that people who may need psychological counseling can access it. And they will talk about it openly. And even if someone's not performing well, the question in the conversation, excuse me, is how are you doing? Is there anything in your personal life that's impacting your ability to do your job?
Mm.
And so it's just shifting it a little bit to just make sure that you're checking in with that individual. Substance abuse is a problem as a country, not just in the restaurant space, but the restaurant space has got a lot of it. Get $100 burning in your pocket and it's 11 o'clock at night, and the bars are open till 1 or 2, you're going to go get
Yeah.
a drink. You're going to
Yeah.
do those things. It's the excess. It's not the fact that you did that. It's the excess. But of course, for even when I was working in restaurants at the unit level, yeah, drugs, sex, and rock and roll, boys, girls, cash, and booze. What could go wrong? You know, and then slip a few some drugs in between there. And I'm not practicing to be a teetotaler saying, oh, you should do it this way. No, you got to make your own choices. But it's to learn the moderation. That's the age you experiment when you're young. So it's
Yeah.
learning how those things come around. But I think it's getting better than it used to be. There's greater awareness about it and what it takes. I mean, the amount of divorce that happens in this industry is astronomical.
Mm.
And I have helped people get into facilities for drug and alcohol addiction. There's been suicides. There's things they just don't know. And if you never talk to the person, you'll just never know what's going on inside of them.
Well, that all goes back to the culture of really just knowing your people and caring about your people,
Right.
and making sure they know how much you care. Let me ask you one more thing, and I'll let you go. But access to capital. It Are there more non-traditional ways to access capital now than there were I don't know, the last decade? I mean, I feel like I'm seeing more and more new tech-enabled ways to try to raise capital, but
Yeah, there are. I mean, look, you still have the original friends and family pass I had around. It's not smart money.
yeah,
It's just money. It's money that people care about you, give you money. That has been there, will still be there. There's funding sites you can try and do that. One of the capital acts or source of capital that concern me are these companies. I'm not going to name them because I don't want to badmouth them. That have large amounts of money and they will loan money at somewhat usurious rates to restaurant operators that don't know any better, and they
mm-hmm.
find themselves paying these, credit card level, payments every single month. And before you know it, they just suck the cash out of the business. Some have been around for a long time, where they sort of take let's say an operator needs 100 grand. He gets 100 grand, but now they tap into your bank account and they pull out a certain amount of money directly from your cash deposits or your credit card payments. Um, that's not good money. They're very, very expensive ways of getting. You might not that it's better to go down the corner and have a guy with a busted nose give you 100 grand because he'll break your legs if you don't pay him in time because of the vig. But it sure feels that way. And I've
Yeah.
seen a couple of companies recently that their balance sheet is such a mess. And so, I mean, it really starts by taking the time to learn the fundamentals of business. You got to
Hmm.
make more money than you spend. I'm old fashioned. I think profit's a good thing. I know for a while there with tech, especially, it's like, oh, because I still ask people, what's your burn rate? And how much runway do you have? And some get on the edge. They got less than 6 months of cash. And then you got to let people go, and you didn't hire them because you wanted to fire them. You hired them because you wanted to grow. But if you weren't paying attention to that, so getting a good financial officer, a good advisory board around you to make sure that you get wiser people helping you understand the things you should look at. If you're a young entrepreneur, go get some gray hairs out there to help you manage your business.
Hmm.
But this will change. I mean, I grew up in the 70s when the big great oil crisis hit, right? But
Yeah.
God, gas was 15 cents a gallon,
Yeah.
and now it's almost $4. We adjusted to that. The interest rates for a home in those days, the mortgage rates were 17%. We're screaming now at 8%. It's still high, but you can still get a loan. But it's not pretty. You gotta watch your P's and Q's. But if we're smart and we learned a lesson right now, when this thing improves, we'll be better off for it.
Well, the industry is individual restaurants have always and will always fail, or groups of restaurants or chains or whatever, which is always tough and sad. But the industry as a collective learns and improves from that
Yep.
continuously. And the industry is creative and flexible and always adapting and evolving and changing and growing. And just as just as our country is. I mean, like, who knows? You can't predict the future. All you can do is go, all right now, today, this is what we know, and this is how we can make smart decisions to try to adapt and adjust and change. And boy, we had to do that on steroids during COVID, and a
Yep.
lot of operators that were probably wondering whether they were even going to have a business are now maybe in the best shape they've been in, because that short acute stressor. I don't know if we talked about this. I talked to you about Nassim Taleb in the book Anti-Fragile.
No.
Do you know his work? Yeah, he wrote The Black Swan, and then if you hear the term Black Swan, he
No,
sort of
I read Black Swan.
okay. So his follow up was Anti-Fragile, and which I love because he talks about there's three characteristics that any object can have. It can either be fragile or robust or anti-fragile. So fragile is like this coffee cup right here. If I drop it on this, concrete floor, it's going to break. Robust is this wood desk. Banging on it, it's not hurting it, but it's not getting better. And anti-fragile is like when I go to the gym and I do my curls, my bicep gets a short acute stressor. It responds by getting better. The industry has this short, very acute black swan event, a highly stressful event that has now made the industry as a collective better.
Yep.
And I think that so much about the people that are in this industry that I've learned from, that I admire. I'm so glad I got to meet you, and I've learned so much from you already. I know you and I will continue to talk, but I just want to thank you for taking the time to come share. I have a lot of respect for you, Fred. You've clearly got tons of wisdom to share. I could probably talk to you for 3 hours, but to respect your time, we'll kind of wrap it up. But I really appreciate you uh, giving us the opportunity to have this conversation on this podcast.
Well, thank you for the invite. I appreciate it and look forward to seeing you again soon, Will.
All right, man. Thank you very much, Fred.
All right. Take care.
All right. That's a wrap, y'all.